All right, here's Daniel in the lion's den. Let's go. So our man Daniel is hanging out in the capital city of Babylon. It is like the place to be for all the young ambitious Jews who are trying to make their dreams come true. But there is a catch. The king of Babylon made a law that if anyone prayed to any god but the king, they would get thrown into a lion's den, no questions asked. And guess who's not down with that? Daniel. He's like, nah, I'm gonna pray to my God and I'm not afraid of your lions. This dude was so committed that even when the king was like, hey, maybe we can be friends if you stop praying to your God thing, he was like, nah fam, I'm good. And that did not make the king happy. The king was so mad that he ordered his servants to get Daniel and throw him in the lioness den, which was like the ultimate punishment back in the day. I mean lions, right? You know how they are. The servants were like, you don't worry, Daniel, we'll see you on the other side. And then they closed the door and left him alone in the dark with a bunch of hungry lions. But Daniel was still like, I got this. He rolled up his sleeves, looked around in the dark and said, hey, this is kind of cool. Like there is something about being in the presence of these majestic creatures that just fills me with joy. Plus, I know my God is with me, so I'm feeling pretty confident. Meanwhile, King Darius is pacing around his palace thinking about how he messed up. Like he knew making that law was a bad idea, but he was too proud to admit it. And now he's worried that Daniel might get eaten alive by lions. So he goes to the lion's den and starts yelling, Daniel, my dude, come out here so I can be like, I'm sorry about earlier and we can be besties. But Daniel doesn't answer. So Darius is like, wait, maybe he's playing hardball. Let me give him a little more time. And he waits around until it's time for Daniel's evening prayer. Now Darius is not a believer, but he knows that Daniel is a righteous man who won't stop praying. So he starts listening outside the den, hoping to hear some divine intervention or maybe some growling lions. What he hears instead is Daniel praying and talking to God like an old friend. And it's kind of awkward because Darius is standing there eavesdropping, like he's listening to someone else's private conversation. But Daniel doesn't care because he's focused on his prayer. He is thanking God for all the blessings in his life and asking for help in this tough situation. And then bam, just as Daniel finishes his prayer, the lions start roaring like they're about to eat him alive. Darius is freaking out at this point. Like, oh my God, I hope Daniel doesn't get eaten. But then he hears something else, a voice that says, Daniel, my son, the righteous one whom I have chosen. Come, I am going to show you what is about to happen to those who oppose you. Now Daniel is not scared anymore. Like he knows God is with him, so he's like, let's do this. Then the voice tells Daniel to open his eyes and look around. And when he does, he sees that the lions have stopped growling and they're staring at him with innocent eyes. It's like they're looking at him like, hey, where's the food? They're basically saying, where's the beef, Daniel? And Daniel is like, oh right. I totally forgot about that. He had been so focused on the lions not eating him that he didn't realize they had eaten in a few days. Daniel was a vegan, so he wasn't carrying any meat on him, but he did have some bread. So he started throwing pieces of bread to the lions like, here you go, guys, thanks. And the lions were like, awesome. This is so much better than your bones, Daniel. Daniel spent the night hanging out with the lions, and in the morning Darius came back to check if he was still alive. When he saw Daniel walking around with the lions, he was like, wait, you're alive? That's great news. But then Daniel was like, yeah, these guys are hungry, so maybe you should get them some food. Darius was like, oh right. Of course. And he immediately ordered his servants to bring the lions some meat. Now, Darius was a smart cookie. He knew that Daniel's God was real and he was jealous like, how could Daniel's God be so powerful? He wanted that kind of power too. So after Daniel was rescued from the lion's den, Darius called him over and was like, "Hey, you got any tips on how I can become a believer?" Daniel was like, "Sure, no problem." And he started telling Darius about God and all the amazing things he had done for the Jewish people. Darius was like, "Sign me up." And he immediately started praying and repenting for all the evil things he had done. Now, God was a merciful dude. He forgave Darius for all the bad stuff he had done and appointed him as the leader of the whole empire. So Darius became the most powerful Jew in the known world. And everyone lived happily ever after. In the end, Daniel's faithfulness paid off, right? He didn't compromise his beliefs even when the king threatened to throw him into the lioness den. And because of that, he earned God's favor and Darius's respect. It's a classic tale of standing up for what you believe in and coming out on top. But here's the kicker. Back in ancient times, people often wrote stories with hidden meanings, like secret messages that helped them cope with tough situations. For example, during World War II, people wrote diary entries that seemed like ordinary daily accounts. But really, they were hiding their true thoughts and feelings about the war and the Nazi occupation. In ancient Israel, they faced their share of tough times. Too, they were constantly fighting for their survival against the empires around them, like the Babylonians, the Assyrians, and the Persians. And sometimes when things got really rough, they turned to stories like Daniel in the lion's den to help them cope. It was like their own personal pep talk from God, reminding them that even when they felt like they were in the biggest, baddest lion's den, they had the strength and faith to get through it. Plus, stories like these weren't just for the average Joe. They also served as a kind of job application for future leaders. If you wanted to be a king or a governor, you had to prove that you could handle the pressure and make the right decisions, even if it meant going against the grain. Just think about it. If you were a ruler back then and everyone thought you were a badass for conquering an empire, you would want to put yourself in a position where you had to choose between two equally tough options. Right? You'd want to be known as the person who always came out on top. Stories like Daniel in the lioness den were a way for future leaders to test themselves and see if they had what it took to lead their people. It was like a job interview straight from God. So, if you're ever stuck in a tough situation, remember the story of Daniel in the lion's den. Even when things seem scariest, you've got the strength and faith to make it through. Alright, that's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button below. And if you haven't already, subscribe for more epic stories from the Bible. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and remember to always choose the right thing, even when it's scary.